this is where we're going to go into some sort of full spoilers for the most recent books in relation, and specifically one thing I want to talk about in relation to this premiere. So, yeah, you can bow out now. This will be our last
warning.
Last warning, but also last section of this conversation. It's,
yes.
The book one. Okay.
Okay, so let's just talk about one thing very specifically that was, there were a few things that were big differences that we were already starting to see in this episode, but perhaps the biggest one is Mance. Now, they've talked about people are going to die on the show that are still alive in the books.
And it already happened last season with one of the Reeds. But this time, even more so because Mance, I think we all have been assuming in the books, could still play a pretty big role. And so for Mance to apparently actually die, and it to not be the rattle shirt fake out is pretty notable. It's
very notable.
Yeah.
It leads us to all kinds of questions, and we had, we had a previous show just sort of introing the season, and one of the things that we talked about was certain things that George R. R. Martin is writing in the book, seemingly now, if they're not going to take place in the show, then we're irrelevant.
Yeah.
I mean, because certain things is fine, like you have collapsed certain characters, you get that. That's just part of an adaptation. But this seems like a thing that we thought was probably pretty significant, but it's not.
Right, because in the book, it's sort of such a big deal that Melisandre switches out Mance with Rattleshirt, and that and who gets the same death basically. Except John has archers. He doesn't do it just himself.
Right.
His archers kill him, sort of in a mercy thing. But then it's this reveal to John, like, oh no, actually this is Mance. He's alive. We got to get Mance out of here. And so you're like, oh, so what will happen with Mance later?
Right.
For them to just kill him now on the show is like, yeah, you're kind of like, oh, I guess the books don't. I mean, I guess whatever's happening with the books is not. It might be big, but it's not endgame big. It's not needed there at the end,
And that sort of seems to be all of the decisions that they're making. It's like, let's streamline everything so that we can drive towards this end. And again, we just talked about how, well, not everything should rest on the ending. I mean, there's so much in the show. We just talked about the turns the characters have made, the ways that we've gotten to know them, the way that you can gain sympathy for somebody that you thought you never could.
Right.
You could learn things about a character that you had no idea were there initially. And this is a really rich world, so if the ending isn't good, that will still be true. We hope the ending's good.
Yeah.
But it does seem to me like, and we've talked about this before, because books 4 and 5 that this season is based on don't have that propulsive feel quite as much, that I think they are trying to create more of a propulsive feel by streamlining things.
Right, streamlining it and making things, upping the stakes a little bit and having something like that happen that really does take Mance out. We should allow for the fact, because people I know you're going to bring up in the comments, yes, they could still do it. They could still have 3 episodes from now, Melisandre be like, hey, I swapped him out. That wasn't Mance. But I don't think so, based on the way they played it.
I really don't think so, based on the way they played it and based on the way that they warned us ahead of time that, like, listen, people really are going to die that you think, if you're a book reader, that you think are still alive.
Yeah.
They're going to be dead.
And I also think that maybe the show is doing, in bigger terms, maybe they're scaling back some of the supernatural magic element that the books were also slow to introduce.
Yeah.
But I still think that when you talk about, we talked about, like, we still haven't seen Lady Stoneheart, and Bran is out for now. He will be back.
Training, doing his magical training.
Doing magical training. So again, they're not ignoring it. It's part of the world.
Right.
But right now, I think they're scaling it back, and you could say maybe that's just the feel of the show. Maybe some of it's budgetary, but I don't know. I think it's just that's the way the show is approaching it. And so for this shapeshifter thing to happen, or for her to enchant people to see some other guy as Mance, again, they've done some crazy magic stuff on the show, but I think maybe they don't want to do as much of it, or the show's just not delving into it in quite as big a way as the books do.
Yeah. I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
If to me, ultimately, whatever's going to serve this story best, and they're having, and I believe that they know what that is. I trust these creators, so David Benioff and T.B. Weiss. So if he needed to die, he needed to die.
And again, on the show's terms, it was a good death. Like it worked. Like we said earlier, it's like we really liked Jon doing that. You know, the moment for Jon, which obviously was important because he did spend time with these people, with Mance, and did have respect for them, even though ultimately he was going to stay true to who he was.
Yeah.
So yeah, it worked for me. And yeah, you got to believe if they did take Mance out now, they know it's because Martin's not going to shock them. And in the final book, Mance is like integral, the most important part of the final chapter.
He's sitting on the Iron Throne.
Right. Oh man, I forgot to mention that to you guys.
Mance on the Iron Throne. Next week maybe we'll do. I don't think that we will do our predictions about how the whole thing is going to end just yet. But
we'll
maybe for the final podcast of the season, we'll do a whole section on that. I don't know yet. I'm predicting a lot of things that may or may not ever happen. Hey, let us know what you think in the comments below about the episode, about Mance seemingly actually being dead. The flashbacks, did you like it? All things Game of Thrones. Do keep it locked right here to IGN.